Today, we are pointing toward August 28th. We're beginning a journey together as a faith community toward August 28th, when hopefully it'll be just as hot and humid out there on that day as it is today, as we anticipate many of you saying, I'm ready to do this now. I'm ready to identify with the martyrs who still to this day, there are places in this world where it's illegal to be a follower of Jesus. It's illegal. And people still get into pools and they are baptized and they're asked to make the confession, who is your Lord? And it's still to this day, it gets me. It just gets me because it's like a lot of things we do in faith, it's bigger than we realize, and we want to begin that journey with you today. The words of Jesus I'm going to start with. And these words are immense, immense, immense words. One day, he is in Caesarea Philippi. Now, I don't know if you know about your geography of the Middle East, but it is pagan central. Matter of fact, when we were there about 11 years ago, and the Caesarea Philippi is where the worship of the god Pan happened, where people engaged in all these dark these dark orgies. Yeah, that was really good timing. I'll keep talking because you can still hear me. There we go. And they literally threw babies into the fire in worship. It was just as pagan as you could get. And he's standing on that site and he says, what's the word on the street about me? Who do people say that I am? And Peter gives the right answer. Boom! Bingo, Peter. Anointed one, the Messiah, the awaited one. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, way to go, Peter. Now, what's loaded in that is the Jewish understanding of Messiah was Superman. No kidding. Faster than a speeding bullet, more power than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The idea of Messiah was he is going to come and kick whatever government is in place's butt at that time. And we're going to be in charge. And the reality is, if you want to use the superhero analogy, Jesus came in vulnerability. He took on human flesh. He was more Batman than Superman. He was going to have scars. And he goes on to say this. He says this. He goes, Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man, the designation of the Messiah, must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. No parables. Now this, again, I can't tell you how this would just crash into the Jewish understanding of Messiah. So, Peter took him aside to straighten out Jesus. Now think about this. Think about the presumptuousness of this. He began to rebuke him. And when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan. Whoa. What do you have in mind? He's saying that because he sees what the adversary is trying to do. You don't need to do this. Same as the temptation on the mountain. I'll give you all the kingdoms of the earth if you'll just follow me. And so that temptation didn't end in the desert. It's still happening. Jesus, you don't need to do this. No, you don't. And Peter unknowingly is saying things that the adversary is whispering in Jesus' ear. You don't have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. You're looking at this from a human standpoint. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, whoever wants to be my disciple, my apprentice, remember that's what that means, my learner, must deny themselves and take up their cross, and follow me. And we're going to, as I'm going to say in a minute, we're going to spend a few weeks unpacking this. But what you need to see immediately is that meant you were a criminal. That's what criminals did. Criminals had a cross. Why? Because they had committed a crime and they were hung from a cross. So he's talking about you must find out what it is that is your mission in my name that you feel so passionate about that it's going to cost you. And then follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. The gospel, remember, is the declaration of Christ that the kingdom of God has come. Caesar had his gospel. That wasn't a Christian word. Every Caesar had their gospel. Every president of the United States has their gospel, their administration. This is how I'm going to make things so great. And Jesus had his gospel, which was the gospel. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory and with the holy angels. This is so packed with so much. We're going to spend 4 weeks unpacking that one line at a time. Because you see a lot in that, don't you? You see a lot in that. Commentators often will take this section and then just divide it into one line at a time. That's what we're going to do. And here is a reason for that. A reason for that is this. The gospel of America is find yourself. Be yourself. The gospel of Christ is lose yourself, and you will find yourself. Do you see the problem there? Do you see the problem with that? The notion, a lot of people in America, they don't have a problem with Jesus because the idea in America is yeah, Jesus is cool if he'll help you find yourself. That's your gig, good, go with it. And so even among Christ followers in America, the idea of Jesus is fine because Jesus is just all right with me because Jesus is my whoopee. He's my whoopee. We don't say this consciously, but unconsciously. His job is to make my life good. His job is to give me comfort and make my life as easy as possible. That's God's job. And we don't say this consciously, but it's a real problem when you then come to Mark chapter 8 and Luke chapter 9. We'll look at that too. And whoa, that's not Jesus is my whoopee. That's a whole different deal. Now, some of you don't get that reference. Some of you do. In 1983, there was a brilliant movie that was kind of the head of men and women sharing family domestic duties. It was with Michael Keaton starred as Mr. Mom. Does anybody remember that film? Yeah, it's a brilliant film. It was kind of the lead-in to, hey, dads, pull up your weight around here, okay? And it was ahead of its time in that way. Wish that movie had never been made. But anyhow, there is a scene in which Dad got to sit down with Kenny. Hey, Ace, we got to have a man-to-man about your whoopee. Take a look at this.
Listen, Ace. You and I have to have a man-to-man talk here about your whoopee. Your whoopee's looking bad, bud. Now, wait a minute. Now, listen to me. I understand that you little guys start out with your whoopees and you think they're great, and they are. They are terrific. But pretty soon, a whoopee isn't enough. You're out in the street trying to score an electric blanket or maybe a quilt. And the next thing you know, you're strung out on bedspreads, Ken. That's serious. Now, give me the whoopee.
No.
Kenny, come on, man.
No.
Okay. Give it to me for a couple of days. If it doesn't work, you got the whoopee back. Please. You got a lot of guts.
Can I have a moment to myself, please?
Absolutely. You got it.
Yeah, that says it, doesn't it? It's that there's this whole thing with Jesus that we all have our whoobies, and then we make him our whoobie, and then there's this problem with identity and what it means to follow Christ. Now, last year, Michael Easter, the author, published a book called The Comfort Crisis. Heartily recommend it. And I got it last year, and I began to say, okay, we got to talk about this, because many of us who deal in leadership, we deal with first world problems, and we deal with these things that, wait a minute, that is not a crisis. And it's because we're in this comfort crisis in America. And I began to say, okay, let me look at that through the lens of Jesus, and started connecting and intersecting it with Mark 8 and go, golly, here I am, I'm a suburban pastor of a wealthy group of people, worldwide comparison speaking. I've got to deal with this myself. I've got to deal with this myself. I'm not exactly leading people in the streets of Calcutta here. And as a pastor, I have a responsibility to make sure that the fullness of the gospel is being spoken. So I knew we had to deal with this at some point. And so this was over a year ago when this book was published. Ryan Hawk recently, in episode 465 of the Learning Leader Show, had Michael Easter on his show. So if you want to check out Ryan's Learning Leader Show, make sure you check that out if you want a condensed version of this. But in America, he says, we have a comfort crisis. Now. I want you to know, I know this series is going to make you uncomfortable. That statement just made you uncomfortable. And if in your mind right now you're thinking, I don't know if I want to tune in on this. You're the person I'm talking to. You're the one who very possibly needs to hear this. On a level, all of us are going to be challenged in this series. I guarantee it. Everybody's going to be challenged. Some of us are going to be really uncomfortable. And right now, you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's an okay thing. Because in this country, again, of find yourself, discomfort means something's wrong. No, not always. Discomfort may mean something good's actually happening. Because he says we have in this country what we'll unpack and call discomfort creep. One day it's whoobies, but the next day it's electric blankets, and then the next day it's quilts. And the comfort creep thing is that today's comfort is tomorrow's discomfort. How does this affect your relationship with Christ? Following the one who said, whoa, you gonna follow me? You gotta deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. Wow. Easter was an alcoholic. He said at one time, his whoopee was alcohol. He writes in the book, he says, we are living progressively sheltered, sterile, temperature-controlled, overfed, under-challenged, safety-netted lives, and it's limiting to the degree to which we experience our one wild and precious life, which is really an interesting statement in light of Jesus saying, I'll come that you might have life and have it to the full. This guy who said, you take up your cross, that's the way to a full life. Really, really, really interesting deal. Now, one of the things that he says that I want to make sure, again, is another qualifier on this, is comfort is not the problem. So if you're hearing this going, man, now I got to sleep on straw. Because we've all seen the stories of monks who took this literally and they went out and did stuff like sit out all night covered in mosquitoes because they love Jesus. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. But we do have a comfort crisis in this country. And I have one definitive, all I have to do is say two words to tell you we have a comfort crisis. Pandemic hits, toilet paper. What's the first thing we freak out about? Toilet paper. That's all the proof you need to know. We have a comfort crisis in this family. But comfort is not the problem. Here's the problem. Comfort as a conscious or unconscious pursuit, purpose, and priority is the problem if you want to follow Christ. Some of you may hear this series and decide, I don't want to follow Christ. Fine. But you need to know that Jesus never said, hey, come to me and I will be your would-be. He never said that. He said, follow me and you will die, possibly. That's what he said. It's not exactly a recruitment pitch, is it? Did you see this week? The Casper Mattress Company is now offering jobs to pay people $25 an hour to sleep on their mattresses. You got the qualification, the candidates have to be good sleepers who can sleep through anything. But they're going to pay $25. It's going to last for about a month, this job, but it's going to lead to other employment opportunities in the company. We're paying people to sleep. I can imagine some dad going, hey, son, here's a job. They finally created a job for you. This one's yours, son. You are qualified for this job. Can you imagine that? Now, there's some jobs where you go, sign me up. Sign me up. I will go beyond 8-hour work shift. But Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't say, come to me and I will be your mattress. He says, come to me and you're going to experience, and no matter how you translate Mark 8:31-35, I'm going to give you some discomfort. You come and follow me, you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's right. So Michael Easter, he writes this book, and he realizes that one day alcohol is his would-be. He says, that killed the stress around my job. It cloaked boredom. It numbed me to sadness and fear and anxiety. It covered me from what was uncomfortable, the insecurities, situations, thoughts, and emotions that are just part of being human. But one morning at age 28, after waking up for the second morning in a row, soaked in urine and vomit and misery, tinged with a smell of whiskey, he said, I chose that day to embrace the discomfort of ditching my liquid comfort blanket. I entered into the acute physical hell of drying out, headaches, nausea, exhaustion, shakes, sweats, other internal hells. Then the real discomfort started, dealing with the bigger challenge of frenetic thoughts as my booze-altered brain began to rewire itself. Day by day, he said, he embraced the raw discomfort of harsh change, and soon, he said, and every person who's ever come to sobriety has said this, soon I began to wake up. You remember that song we sang? I began to wake up. He said, soon I started waking up. I started coming alive. He said, in that process, I wasn't a completely new person who would be confused with Mr. Rogers, but I was more aware. I was becoming more alive. And he says this. He said, that's when I realized that my life had needed medicated, not because it was too uncomfortable, but because it was actually too comfortable. Interesting paradox, isn't it? I was marinating in comfort, except that these comforts that I'm talking about were less acutely destructive, but potentially more insidious forms of it. I had to take a look at my everyday life. I was comfortable quite literally every single moment. I awoke in a soft bed in a temperature-controlled home. I commuted to work in a pickup with all the conveniences of a luxury sedan. I killed any semblance of boredom with my smartphone. I sat in an ergonomic desk chair staring at a screen all day, working with my mind and not my body. And when I arrived home from work, I filled my face with no-effort, high-caloric foods that came from Lord knows where. Then I plopped down on my overstuffed sofa to binge on television streamed down from outer space. I rarely, if ever, felt the sensation of discomfort. The most physically uncomfortable thing I did, exercise, was executed inside an air-conditioned building as I watched cable news channels that are increasingly bent on making me comfortable about my worldview rather than challenging it. I wouldn't run outside unless the conditions were, well, not too hot, not too cold, but what Goldilocks would like. Now, again, comfort isn't the problem. It is a wonderful servant. It is a terrible master. And Jesus said, you only have one master. You only have one master. You can't serve two masters. And I do think, as the pastor of this church for a long time, I do think the constant thing that has to be intercepted is the entropy that comes with comfort. You know, and I see this all the time. You know, I'll give you an anecdote here that I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but in 1998, we said, we need to make some of you uncomfortable. We don't have room. We don't have room for all the people that are coming. So we got to start church on Saturday night. We got to start church on Saturday night. And we had people say, I'm leaving a church. Church is not meant for Saturday night. I'm leaving this church. Because I asked 400 people to say, would you start going to church on Saturday? Yeah, we'll start doing it, but we're going to do it in a grumpy way. We're going to about it. And then we did this, and it went really well. It went really well. And then all of a sudden in America, people stopped coming to church. In the last 7 years, our Saturday night was like, woo, it was just going down. And then the pandemic hit, we knew, okay, this is where we need to reorient the church. And I've had people come up to me and say, hey, listen, I'm angry at you. Because Saturday night was my gig. I love having Sundays all to myself. Saturday night was my deal. Some of you are here back. You come back now. You actually come back. But Saturday night was my deal. I never had one person say to me, gosh, Saturday night, it allowed me to bring so many people to Jesus. It was always about, this was uncomfortable for me to make this change. And as a pastor, you see these things where you go, wait a minute, it's my responsibility to be unpopular here. And whether that's a good decision or not, constantly there has to be this interception of the entropy that comes with being an American, living in a country where I don't even have to reset my thermostat in the morning. I set it and it does it for me. And that same Jesus said, hey, you want to follow me? Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but I don't have a climate-controlled house. I don't have a house. Now, as a follower of Christ, I have to think that through. Don't you think that? Don't you think we have to think that through? It's really getting uncomfortable in here now. Have you noticed that? It's really getting uncomfortable. Because here's the thing. Being a Christ follower in our lifetime is going to get less comfortable. It is not going to be comfortable being a follower of Christ in this. Now, I'm not talking about some progressive Christian that just melds faith with culture. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's some things about Jesus that are really uncomfortable. That our culture says, oh, we'll take the kingdom, but we don't want the king. we don't want him to tell us about some of these things. So what we do in Players Box is we have this video that we lead with that is called the Jungle Tiger and the Zoo Tiger video. And it's really, I'll explain the essence of it. I'll characterize it, but it's a really neat video, and it takes two tigers. I'll call one Tony, is raised in the jungle, and Tigger, his brother, is raised in the zoo. Okay? So you have Tony and Tigger. They're brothers. They're basically the same DNA, but the video brilliantly shows how Tigger and Tony take really different paths. What happens to Tigger in the zoo? Here's his life. Food brought to him, water dripping constantly from a faucet. All he has to do is every once in a while during the day, he's instigated to go outside and lay on a stone so people who have paid money can watch you, Tigger. And that's Tigger's life. He's a zoo tiger. He's doing a zoo job. But his brother, Tony, he's in the jungle. What happens to tigers in the jungle? They don't have food coming to them. They got to find food. They got to hunt. They got to look for threat. They got to constantly be on the alert. Now, what happens if you take Tigger and you put him in the jungle? Tigger going to be in trouble really fast. Because Tigger is not ready for that. Tigger hasn't trained for the jungle. Now here's this. We raise kids and we live our lives like Tigger, but we expect to flourish in the jungle. Because life is a jungle. Life has threat. Life is uncomfortable most of the time. It really is. And so we show this video, and it's brilliant. And how we learn, the only way you can really learn, and think about your life in this way. Think about your life. The only way you ever grow is being uncomfortable. Amen. It's the only way. That mattress was so good. And I gave it all to sleep on that Casper mattress. But I grew so much during my time at Casper sleeping on them. Never happens that way. And that's why, as Christ followers, I'm telling you, and you got to figure this out, because your comfort is my discomfort. My comfort is your discomfort. Don't judge each other on this, okay? Don't judge, hey, I'm a marathon runner. I don't need this. No. It's different for everybody. As Christ followers, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I started looking at this through the lens of the value. For me, I've been in ministry now. It'll be 37 years in November since I started ministry. And I realize now why I've grown so much. It's because 37 freaking years of being uncomfortable. That's why. It's not comfortable for me. It's why every week I just debate, should this be the week I quit? You think sometimes now that I think about that because I'm older? No, I've thought about it every week for 37 years. Every week. And here it is. Brené Brown said it so well. You can have comfort or you can have growth, but you can't have both. And this is why Richard Rohr, the Franciscan priest, said that every day you ought to pray for a humiliation. Now, I'm a Browns fan, so it comes naturally. I don't have to pray for that. It just comes all the time. It's a daily humiliation. But every day. Why was he saying that? He said, because just like the frog in the kettle, there is a comfort creep, that what will happen is the thing that is challenging you today will be tomorrow's comfort. And you can have comfort or you can have growth, but you can't have both. So this don't you hate it when I go on break and I've read all these books? So another book I recommend, Steve Magnus, his book, Do Hard Things, really breaks down the science of toughness. He shows why the Junction Boys with Bear Bryant, remember that story, is not toughness. Bob Knight, his way of doing things was not toughness. Actually not toughness. And he shows the science behind what builds resilience in people, toughness. And he has this really cool, the book, here, I'm gonna give you the book, right here it is. Here's the book right here. The first pillar is ditch the facade, embrace reality. So this is where we rumble with, what's the reality of my life that I've really gotten comfortable? So today, obviously, I'm the sand and the oyster that hopefully will produce the pearl in your life. Why? Because the sand is what makes the oyster uncomfortable. So embrace reality. Accept what you're capable of. Like if you hear this today, look at this through the lens of physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, spiritual discomfort, relational discomfort. You can choose whatever it is. There are some of those that we're going to unpack during the series. But for example, if you say, you know what, I know that I'm physically too comfortable, I can't run, walk a quarter mile for a week. And then walk a half a mile the next week. And then walk 3/4 of a mile the next week. And before long, you'll begin experiencing physical discomfort that leads to growth. Know when to hold them and when to fold them. Know when, you know what, I'm doing some stuff right now that we're going to show you an analogy, a continuum that it's now in destructive pain. That's not good. That's not good. Some of you live with chronic pain and you're already there, so you need to hear the lens of this series through that. You need to hear that maybe your search for following Jesus, and you're dealing with back pain all the time. We're not challenging you you need to be physically less comfortable. No, but there may be some emotional, spiritual things you need to do because you've gotten comfortable. That's the first pillar. Second pillar, listen to your body. Your emotions are messengers, not dictators. And if you want the essence of the problem in our country, is emotion is our dictator. I'm not feeling good. One of the reasons to do some things that are uncomfortable is because it doesn't feel good. Why do you do it? Because emotions are my messengers. They tell me something, but they don't dictate my life. If you go by your emotions all the time, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in big trouble. Own the voice in your head. This is the essence of Player's Box. Own the voice in your head. You're not a victim of your thoughts. You're the dictator of your thoughts. Third pillar, respond instead of react. Keep your mind steady. Turn the dial so you don't spiral. This is really important that every single one of us, when it comes to experiencing discomfort, that we learn the pause, right? We learn the gap. There's the event, there is my response, and there's the outcome. And within that response is a gap where I don't allow myself to spiral. I'm telling you, if you'll see every discomfort through the lens of, hey, this helps me follow Jesus, you'll be amazed at how you'll have the pause. And one of the things that Michael Easter talks about is what happens to your brain when you stand in line and you don't use your phone to intercept the boredom. So what do? I do this. Stand in line, good, got my phone. I don't care. Take as long as you want. It's changed waiting rooms, hasn't it? Let's be honest, it's changed waiting. But there's value in actually choosing the long line. Okay, now we've gone to heresy. Haven't we? Because the checkout line at Kroger was made for me. But choosing discomfort, why? Because Tigger is training to live in the jungle like Tony when he does that. That's what's happening. You're training yourself to live in the reality of this world. Fourth pillar, transcend discomfort. Build the foundation to do hard things. You'll be amazed at the simplest things where you choose the long road, choose the hard road, and simplest things, how you're laying a foundation where the jungle doesn't get you now like it used to, that you can survive and thrive within the jungle. But look at this one. Find meaning in discomfort. And this is one of the great things about discomfort, and all kinds, emotional, physical, emotional, relational, can be a part of your discipline of following Jesus. Every single thing that you experience in discomfort can be, okay, Jesus, I'm learning something about you here. I just got insulted. That was uncomfortable. Did Jesus ever get insulted? Did he? Yeah. And one of the things we're going to talk about in this series is endurance, whether it's a long walk or run or standing in line. Endurance is a spiritual discipline that is an essential for people who want to grow in Christ. It's an absolute essential. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the fact that this, in every workout I've ever done that I wanted to quit, this verse right here has always saved me. When I've wanted to not do that extra, when I've wanted to just bail. And it's this verse that has saved me, and I want to share this with you now, and I want you to spend some time this morning before we go thinking about this verse. The Apostle Paul is talking about his journey. Things I used to think were important aren't important now. Things I used to put on my resume as like, this is such a big deal. It's not a big deal now that I follow Christ. In this one verse in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10, he says this, I want to know Christ. The purpose of everything I do. I want to know what is it how he responded in that situation? What did he respond with in that situation? What was his pause meter like in that situation? I want to know Christ. I want to know the power of his resurrection. Anybody want that? Anybody here I want the power of Jesus. Yeah, baby. But I want to know the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, if I may somehow attain to the resurrection from the dead. You don't get resurrection unless you have death. You want life? Jesus says, I'll show you the way. You got to have death first. And every time, it'll be a run, it'll be some type of workout, and I want to quit ministry when I've wanted to quit. No, wait a minute. I said, I want to know Christ. I want to have the community of sharing in some of the things he suffered so that I can increase his power in my life. You got to ask yourself, do you want that? Because if you're a Christ follower, this is your life right here. I'm telling you what your life is to be about. I want to know Christ. From that, others know Christ through me, etc. But I want to know Christ. Everything in life I learned in leadership, I learned from Jaws. So there's this scene in Jaws. I'm always really into it in the summer, beach, sharks, movies, stuff like that. But there's a scene in Jaws that you know. If you've never seen the movie, you know the scene where they're in the town hall. Captain Quint comes in and he scratches the chalkboard with his fingernails. Remember that? And he looks at the townspeople and he goes, you all know me. You know how I earn a living. And then he says this. He goes, I'll catch this bird for you, but it's not going to be pleasant. And he says this. Here's what I was thinking of this week. I was thinking about this series. He looks at the people. He goes this. He goes, now you got a decision to make. Are you going to ante up and live? Or are you going to take it cheap and be on welfare all winter? And when I think of Jesus looking at people going, what do you want? That's what he often would do. He goes, what do you want? He would basically say, do you want to play it cheap? Live the American way. Do it. Comfort is your God. Find yourself. Or do you think there's something to me? And if you lose yourself for me, you'll find a version of yourself that you never dreamed possible. But you got to make the choice. You got to make the choice. And this month, we want to give you that choice. Right now, we're going to reprise that song, Wake Up. Okay? And I want you to make a decision while you're sitting here as we lead into this month. Are you going to wake up? Are you going to wake up? Are you going to be the numb American who's just going through life? It's really a trek to increase comfort is all it is. That's all it is. Great, fine. There's a worse way to live. Or are you going to say, nope, I want to know Christ. I want to know Christ. Team's going to sing.